So we're going to have a go now at editing and improving our work from yesterday, okay? Now I've picked one of my first sentences that I wrote for our paragraph that I modelled to you yesterday because I think that I can improve on it because I didn't like what I've written on this sentence. And there were actually two sentences right at the beginning where I hadn't really been able to identify any skills that I'd actually used in my sentence. So the first one I'm going to look at here is the soldier knew in his aching guts that the fallen man's wound was too serious to survive and he had to do something. So based on the work that we've now just looked at, I need to think about including an expanded noun phrase, a fronted adverbial, and a subordinate clause. Okay? So here is my improved sentence. Let's see where I've used these skills. Regrettably, the shocked, saddened soldier. That was a tongue twister I hadn't realised. The shocked, saddened soldier, who could hardly believe what he had just witnessed, knew in his aching gut that the fallen man's wounds was life-threatening and time was running out to help him. Okay? So I just want you to pause the video and have a think. Where have I used an expanded noun phrase, my fronted adverbial, and a subordinate clause? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, well I can see here, regrettably, this is my fronted adverbial. Okay, and we know it's a fronted adverbial because it's telling me how the action's going to happen. And I've got the shocked, saddened soldier. Okay, and I've actually used alliteration in there 3 times because it's got shocked S, saddened S, soldier S. I've used the S for those sound for those. Who could hardly believe what he had just witnessed? That is my relative clause, okay, my subordinate clause, because this is additional information that doesn't make sense on its own. So that's my dependent sentence. It starts with my relative pronoun, and I have both my commas in here to show where my relative clause starts and finishes, okay? Now, this is my second sentence that I picked up that I didn't like. Dropping to his knees on the blood-stained ground, he took a deep breath to steady his nerves. So I now need to think, well, how am I going to improve on that with these additional 3 skills? Because there are some good words in there, but I think I can expand on them. So here's my improvement on it. Dropping his aching, shaking knees to the blood-stained ground, he paused for a moment and took a slow, deep breath to steady his nerves, because he knew that if he didn't, he would lose all control. Okay? So pause the video and have a think. Where have I now included those additional skills and how have I managed to improve on that original sentence? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, we're here. I've got dropping his aching, shaking knees on the blood-stained ground. Okay, now again, I kept it as my verb opener because that's a good skill to have. But I needed some adjectives in there to describe his knees. Okay, they should never have left a noun, particularly on its own. So I've got the aching, shaking knees. Okay, almost sounds very same as well. It's very poetic the way it reads. He paused for a moment and took a slow, deep breath. So there I've got a conjunction in there for and. Okay, I've got my expanded noun phrase, and then because he knew that if he didn't, he would lose all control. So that's where I've got my subordinate clause in there, because I've got my subordinating conjunction because. Now I have used if in here as well, okay, but I've started it here with because. So there simply, just by using those 3 skills, I managed to keep my same sentence, but I managed to just improve on it, okay? So what I want you to do now is I want you, before I move on and show you the next bit today, is I want you to go back and find 1 or 2 sentences from your work yesterday that you think you can improve on, okay? And I want you to see if you can include an expanded noun phrase, a fronted adverbial, and a subordinate clause in both of them, okay? So go back and have a look at yesterday's work and see if you can rewrite 2 of your sentences. So we're going to model the final part of our paragraph today. Okay, now this only has to be a few lines long, and this is when we have to start coming out of the flashback. And obviously the rule is we're not allowed to say we've moved into a flashback. Therefore, we're not allowed to say, well, we're moving out of a flashback. Okay, so we have to use all the skills that we've learnt to signify that we're coming out of that transition. You know, we're transitioning out of that flashback and we're coming out of it, okay? Same way we did going into the flashback, we now need to do the opposite about coming back out, okay? So here's my opening sentence that I've got. So in the distance, the sounds of warfare began to fade. Okay, yet again, another spelling mistake. Miss Humphrey, I'm slacking. I do apologise. You know what slacking is, don't you? We did this in reading. I'm slacking now that I'm starting to get lazy. I do apologise. So in the distance, the sounds of warfare began to fade. Now, just looking at that opening sentence, you can see here, in the distance. So instantly, based on what I've been learning today, I thought, I'm going to improve my sentence. So I started it here with a fronted adverbial. Okay, and I've got my comma, okay, because it's my fronted adverbial at the beginning. This is part of my subordinate clause. The sounds of warfare began to fade, and the familiar, so I've got the and, so I'm now adding on to the information, and the familiar putrid smell of suffocating toxic smoke and death began to retreat, okay? Now, we've looked at the word putrid before when we looked at our amplification skills. Okay, and this is where we use the repetition skills of different synonyms, okay, for bad. So putrid, toxic, rancid, rank, the stench. Okay, so I've linked it now back to that work that we did beforehand, because those were the one main thing that lingered the most, was the smells, wasn't it? Okay, so we've got the putrid smells of suffocating toxic smoke. Okay, so there I've got my expanded noun phrase in there. I've got 2 additional adjectives. Okay. Now here I've got the word retreat. And the reason why I've circled this is purely because on a vocab basis, we've looked at the word retreat before, and we looked at it in our reading lesson. Can anyone remember what it means to retreat? Yeah, good. So it means to move back, to move away. Okay, so if I'm out in the forest and a wolf comes towards me, I'm going to retreat. I'm going to back off. I'm going to move away. I'm going to run as far away as possible so I don't get attacked or bitten by a wolf. Okay, so that idea of the smoke and death beginning to retreat, that smell's disappearing. It's starting to fade. It's leaving. It's going away somewhere else. Okay. Now he sat there in limbo for a few moments before. Now when you sit in limbo, being in limbo is when you're in a state of nothingness. Okay. So I might be in the middle of doing something and just suddenly stop, and there's a few seconds where nothing happens. And it's like just being in limbo from waiting for something to either go one way or to go the other way, or to do something or to stop or start something. So we sat there in limbo for a few moments before. Okay, and I've used the word before in there because this is my time preposition. Okay, something's now about to happen that's going to potentially now snap him out of this flashback. Okay, and we know that the flashback is starting to retreat, because I used the word retreat, but those sounds that he's reminiscing in his head, those smells that he's almost remembering and smelling himself, they're starting to fade. So this memory is now starting to get further away because they're very indistinctive. Remember indistinctive from last lesson? When something becomes unclear, unsure. So if those smells were really prominent and right there in the front of his head when he was thinking about the memory, and they're starting to fade and disappear, that memory's getting further and further away. So now that's how we're starting to show. We're now transitioning out of our flashback. So something now needs to happen that might trigger him to suddenly snap out of it. So I need to think to myself, well, what is it that he's doing? Well, he's sitting there, he's on his own, he's in his room, he's playing the piano. Now, obviously, we know he's playing this song from memory. Okay, this is pure muscle memory from his fingers. He's playing a song that he knows off by heart. Now, I can play the piano, and 8 times out of 10, I can play the piano without looking at the keys. I'm not an expert or novice or anything like that. But there are times I might be playing a song that I do know really, really well, and I don't have to look at the keys. I could be looking somewhere else, or I could play it with my eyes shut. But if it's not a song I've been playing for a long time, sometimes there might be a slip up in the memory. And that slip up might be that I hit a wrong note, or I play something wrong, or I suddenly forget what it is that I'm playing. So it might be that he's triggered by hitting a wrong note. And it's a very beautiful, very melancholy tune that he's playing. And if he's going to hit that wrong note, it's going to offset the tone to the music. And it might suddenly trigger him to think, well, hang on a second, that note didn't sound right. And it might just suddenly pull him back to the present day. So he sat there in limbo for a few moments before he was interrupted by an off-sounding note that suddenly jolted him into the present. So I've gone for that concept. He's playing it without looking, he's not thinking, his mind's gone somewhere else, and suddenly he hits a wrong note. And he's thinking, well, that's weird. And suddenly, bam, snap, he's out of it. Okay, so I've got there, he was interrupted by an off-sounding note that suddenly jolted him into the present. This is my subordinating conjunction, okay? That is my subordinating conjunction. This is my whole subordinate clause. Now, I have added an additional adverb in there. But that idea of jolting into the present, when you jolt, you suddenly, you startle, you move very quickly, very suddenly, and very sharply, okay? Now, when that happens, I knew that was going to happen in the middle of my video, apologies. That suddenly jolt him into the present. That's almost like that snap motion. We've gone from flashback to real life. And I've used the word present there just as a little hint that we're now back where we started. Okay. So my next sentence I'm going to add on here is the final bit. So I've got my adverb. Okay. So the change in the music woke him from his memory as his fingers subconsciously, when you do something subconsciously, so I've got my as there, when you do something subconsciously, you do it without thinking, okay? So, I'm trying to think of something I might do subconsciously. When I'm driving, when people drive, you drive subconsciously. I could be listening to the radio, I could be singing Disney at the top of my lungs at the traffic lights, I could be talking to someone in the car, I could be on the phone with the Bluetooth on, I could be listening to music, I could just be sat in silence. There are times I'll drive from home to school or school to home and almost not really have noticed I've driven home because it becomes second nature, something I'm doing and I'm not really having to think about it. And that's the same as people who play songs from memory. You don't have to think about it, your body just knows, it just does it, okay? So his fingers subconsciously picked up from where he'd left off, and he sighed deeply, Okay, so here I've now added a bit of extra information as to now how he's now feeling about what it is he's just gone through in his head. Now, remembering the ghosts of his past and the sadness in his life, which had helped to shape him. So I've got which had helped to shape him here, okay? That is my relative clause there, okay, because I've got the word there, which, okay? So I've just closed it off nicely and rounded it off at the end there because that's the final part of our paragraph. All we need is that jolting part where he comes back and we're done. Okay, so the paragraph doesn't need to be long. Okay, it is a very short, simple transition out of the flashback, and it just needs to link between something getting further away or fading or the memories becoming unclear or indistinctive and something suddenly going to jump him out. And that last sentence is just going to be him almost reminiscing, almost that final concluding part of, well, wow, you know, that was quite a traumatic memory to go back, and it's almost just bringing him back to the present day, okay? So you're now going to write your final sentences to your flashback. Now remember, it doesn't have to be long, okay? And it doesn't need to include all of the skills in this unit. Look at this one here. If I go back here, okay, I haven't used everything. I haven't got a simile in there. I haven't got a metaphor in there. There's no personification. I haven't used all of those skills because it's not necessary to squeeze into such a small paragraph, okay? Now, you must not write anything that uses the word flashback, okay? The whole point is it's almost like show, not tell, okay? You show us that he's in a flashback. You show us he's coming out of that flashback. Don't tell me he's in the flashback and, oh, well, now he's out of the flashback, okay? So use the skills you've learned to write the transition, okay, without actually physically explaining that he's come out of his flashback. Okay, once you've had a go at doing that, please go and find a paragraph that you're really proud of, okay? And I want you to write it up. Now, I've not sent this home to you because I know if I send some of you this little box, you're going to have a go at me and go, oh, Miss Humphrey, that box is far too small. My handwriting and my writing is so amazing, it's not going to fit. So all I want you to do is find a nice piece of paper that's blank and it hasn't got anything on it. I want you to have a go at writing up one of those paragraphs. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to post some of those on Twitter because I'd love to be able to show Mr. Day some of the English work that you've written at home. Okay, so have a go at your final paragraph. Have a go at rewriting up a new one. That's going to be your final part for the topic, and we'll start our new topic on Monday. All right, good luck, year 5.